For 30 minutes, we're going to talk about a beautiful, frustrating, brilliant, and broken place. Washington State. From the mist-shrouded coast where the Pacific crashes into the continent, to the jagged snow-capped peaks of the Cascades, to the rolling wheat fields of the Palouse, it is a landscape of staggering, almost defiant beauty. They call it the Evergreen State, a name that suggests permanence, resilience, and constant life. The trees are always green, but the politics, the government, the ability of this state to function as a cohesive, coherent whole, that is anything but evergreen. It's brittle, it's fractured, and it's failing. This isn't a standard left versus right screen. You can get that anywhere. This is about something deeper, something baked into the very soil and psyche of Washington. This is about the fundamental, unbridgeable fault lines that make governing this state not just difficult, but impossible.
The Evergreen Divide, where the tall trees hide, truth gets lost in the tide, where the rivers collide. Red and blue, but the green got burned. Lessons in the soil, when will we learn?
In its current form, politics in Washington State will never work. The state of two states, the Civil War of the Cascades. The first and most obvious reason Washington is ungovernable in its geography, it's not just a line on the map. It's a psychological chasm. The Cascade Mountains aren't just a mountain range. They're a Berlin Wall of Washington State. On the west side, you have the Emerald City, Seattle, a global tech hub, a bastion of progressive politics, one of the bluest patches of land in the entire country. It's surrounded by a crescent of like-minded counties, King, Pierce, Snohomish. This is the Puget Sound region. It's where the people are, where the money is, where the votes are. This is Western Washington. It's caffeinated, educated, secular, and overwhelmingly votes Democrat. It concerns all climate change, social equity, transit-oriented development, and funding for the arts. Then you cross the Cascades, and you enter a different country. This is Eastern Washington. It's vast, agricultural, sparsely populated, and deeply conservative. Its economy is built on wheat, apples, hops, and timber. Its culture is rooted in land, faith, and fierce sense of independence from the urban elites on the other side of the mountains. This is the land of small towns, farmers, and a libertarian streak that runs a mile wide. It overwhelmingly votes Republican. Its concerns are water rights, Second Amendment rights, overregulation, and the feeling that Seattle is a foreign power imposing its will upon them. Think about that. You have two populations that just don't agree on policy. They live in an alternate reality. A voter in Spokane and a voter in Bellevue have fundamentally different views on the role of government, the nature of freedom, and the priorities of life itself. This creates a political dynamic that is permanently broken. The governor, the state senate, the House of Representatives, they are all dominated by the population center of the West. Eastern Washington feels perpetually colonized. Its representatives are a permanent minority, shouting into a hurricane of Seattle-centric legislation. They can slow things down, they can amend, they can protest, but they can never win, not the big stuff. So every debate, from tax policy to environmental regulations, becomes another battle in this cold civil war. The West sees the East as a bunch of backward hicks clinging to their guns and Bibles. The East sees the West as a bunch of latte-sipping socialists who want to take their money and their freedoms. Neither side is listening, because neither side can even comprehend the other's worldview. You cannot build a functional government when half the state believes its other half is the enemy. The tyranny of the minority, the initiative system. If the geographic divide is a disease, the initiative system is the cancer that metastasizes throughout Washington's political body. On its surface, it sounds wonderfully democratic, the power of the people. If the legislator won't act, the citizens can gather signatures and put a law directly on the ballot. What could go wrong? Everything. The initiative system has turned Washington governance into a chaotic, reactive, and profoundly unserious mess. It bypasses the deliberative, messy, and essential process of legislating. Compromise. That thing you do when you have to build a coalition and consider unintended consequences. The initiative process throws all of that out the window. It has become a playground for special interests and wealthy individuals. Don't like a tax? Bankroll on an initiative and repeal it. Want to lock in a specific spending priority? Pay for a signature gathering firm and put it on the ballot. Tim Eyman, the state's most famous initiative promoter, built an entire career on this, weaponizing populism to cripple state revenue for decades. The result is a state budget that is a patchwork quilt of voter-approved mandates, often conflicting and contradictory. The legislator is left with its hands tied, unable to adapt to changing economic conditions because crucial parts of the budget are carved in stone by a vote that happened 10 or 20 years ago. It also creates a system of government by bumper sticker. Complex issues are reduced to a simplistic, emotionally charged 30-second ad. Should we spend more on schools? Yes. Should we lower car tabs? Yes. Should we fund new transit? Yes. Should we cut property taxes? Yes. The initiative process lets people vote yes to all of it, without ever having to confront the fundamental trade-offs that governing requires. You want to know why nothing gets done? Because the people through the initiative system have systematically hamstrung their own government. They've taken away the legislator's flexibility, its ability to prioritize, and its power to govern. They demand services but refuse to pay for them. They demand action but tie the hands of the very people meant to act. It's a statewide case of political self-sabotage. The progressive paradox, when ideology eats itself. Let's zoom back into the Puget Sound, the engine of the state. Here we find the third reason for Washington's dysfunction, the progressive paradox. This is the most self-inflicted wound of all. Western Washington's commitment to its progressive ideals is absolute, so unwavering that it's become a form of political paralysis. The goal is no longer to achieve good outcomes. The goal is to achieve perfect, ideological, peer outcomes. Nowhere is this more visible than in the homelessness crisis. Seattle and surrounding cities have spent billions of dollars. Yes, billions with a B. And yet, the crisis has deepened. Why? Because the ideology prevents a pragmatic solution. You can't build simple, cost-effective shelters or housing because it might not meet every single environmental or design standard. You can't enforce basic laws against public camping or drug use because that is seen as criminalizing poverty or addiction. You can't prioritize treatment for those who want it over enabling those who don't, because that violates the principle of housing first in its most absolutist form. Every potential solution is picked apart by a coalition of activists, lawyers, and concerned citizens who, while often well-intentioned, demand a level of perfection that is simply unattainable in the real world. The result? Nothing. Or worse, a series of expensive, slow-moving pilot programs that barely make a dent. The paralysis extends to other areas. Transportation projects get bogged down for decades by environmental reviews and community objections, ensuring that by the time they're built, they're already inadequate for the population growth they were meant to serve. The state's obsession with process and equity often means the process becomes the point, and equity is measured in meetings held, not problem solved. The progressive heart of Washington state is so focused on building the perfect society that it's forgotten how to build a functioning one. It's a place where the good has become the enemy of the perfect, and in that war, everyone loses. The ghost in the machine, the unkillable tax structure. Underlying all of this, the geographic war, the initiative chaos, the ideological paralysis is a single foundational problem. Money, specifically how the state raises or fails to raise it. Washington state has the most regressive, upside-down, and fundamentally broken tax structure in the entire nation. It is a national embarrassment. How does it work? We have no state income tax, none. Instead, we rely overwhelmingly on sales tax. Think about what that means. A billionaire buying a new yacht pays the same sales tax rate as a single mother buying groceries and clothes for her kids. The poor and the middle class, who spend a much larger percentage of their income on taxable goods, shoulder a vastly heavier burden than the wealthy, who can afford to save and invest their money tax-free. The tech millionaires and billionaires of Seattle, who have benefited most from the state's economy, contribute the least proportionally to its public services. Why doesn't this change? Because it's politically impossible. Any attempt to introduce a state income tax is met with immediate and total political warfare. The business community and the wealthy fight it tooth and nail. They fund initiatives to make it even harder to pass. The general public, terrified of a new tax, has been conditioned for decades to reject any proposal. So the state is trapped. It has the needs of a modern, high-cost state, world-class universities, massive infrastructure projects, a growing population, complex social needs, but it has a tax system of a 19th century frontier territory. It's like trying to run a Fortune 500 company on a lemonade stand's budget. The fiscal straitjacket poisons everything else. The debate between the West and the East is never about policy. It's a fight over a shrinking pie. The progressive desire to fund new programs is constantly crashing against the hard reality of an empty treasury. The legislator is forced into a series of agonizing choices every 2 years. Do we fully fund K-12 education as mandated by the state Supreme Court? Or do we pay for mental health services? Or do we fix the crumbling bridges? We can't do it all. This broken tax structure is the ghost in the machine. It's the unseen force that makes every other problem worse. It fuels the resentment in Eastern Washington, which feels it pays for Seattle's failures. It cripples the ability of Western Washington progressive government to enact its own agenda. And it makes the entire political process a zero-sum game of desperation, where the only thing that gets cut is the future, the inevitable fracture. So where does that leave us? We have a state cleaved in by two mountains and a culture. We have a government hamstrung by a populist initiative system that rewards simplistic thinking. We have a dominant political ideology so committed to purity that it can't solve the very problem it was elected to fix. And we have a tax system that is fundamentally unjust and structurally inadequate for the 21st century. These are not just separate problems. They are a single, interlocking system of failure. Each element reinforces the other. The geographic divide makes tax reform impossible. The broken tax system fuels the culture wars. The initiative process prevents either side from finding a lasting solution. The ideological paralysis in the West proves to the East that the government is incompetent, which deepens their desire to be free from it. This is not a temporary slump. This is not a problem that can be fixed by one good election or one charismatic leader. This is a terminal condition. This political entity known as the state of Washington is no longer a viable or functional whole. The talk of split, once a fringe fantasy, is becoming the only logical conclusion. The idea of creating a new state, Liberty or Lincoln, or whatever they want to call it, out of Eastern Washington is no longer just a cry of frustration. It is the only rational response to a century of political failure. It is a recognition that you cannot force two populations who share nothing but a border to live under the same set of laws. The Evergreen state is a lie. The politics here are not evergreen. They are brittle, dead wood, ready to snap at the slightest pressure. The system will not be reformed. It will not be fixed. It will not work. The only thing left to see is how long it takes for everyone to finally admit it and for the inevitable fracture to become a reality. So you drive away from the Capitol Dome in Olympia, leaving the protest and the press conferences behind. You head east and the rain stops, the sky clears, The Douglas fir gives way to the ponderosa pines, and the Cascades rise up like a great stone wall, impassable and final. On this side, the air is different, the light is different. The people look at you in the eye with a different kind of weariness, not the fatigue of traffic and tech, but the exhaustion of being forgotten. And you realize the truth. The lines on the map were always a lie. The state is already broken. It's two places, two peoples, two futures, held together by sheer stubborn inertia of a failed idea. They call it the Evergreen State, but the Evergreens are on the opposite side of the chasm, and their roots will never meet. The only thing left to do is draw a new line on the map, one that finally makes sense, one that admits what everyone else knows. It's over. Thanks for watching.